Boom. Hey guys, it's Fletcher and Dr. Thayer. We were not able to be together, so we're virtually together this week. Woo, here we are. And today we are going to talk about taking your outline and turning it into your draft. So make sure as we are working on our drafts that you are referencing your outline as a great starting point.
Absolutely.
As we talked in last week's video, we talked about PIE. You saw our beautiful PIE on the front. So just as a refresher, PIE stands for point, illustrate, explain, and it's really a way to organize your body paragraphs.
Yes. And I just want to add that the outline is like the blueprint for the essay. If you do not do the outline, there's no way that you can organize your essay the way that you need to. So make sure that you're looking at the outline, the feedback that we've given, so that way you know you're on the right track because it's already organized in that point, illustrate, explain format. So it's going to help you quite a bit.
Yes. And if you do a good job on your outline, hopefully you'll notice that it's very easy to write your essay. So yes, as Dr. Thayer said, make sure you are reviewing your feedback. We are both giving feedback on the outline. So make sure you are looking at that feedback and applying it before you go forward. And if you have any questions about it, make sure you are setting up a time to meet with us during office hours or emailing us.
Yes.
Okay. So here's an example of, let's say, an outline. And this might be what the student had written down in the section. So the point is that the speaker borrows credibility from other professionals. For the illustration, the student has pulled some quotes from the TED Talk that he or she is going to use as they're writing the paragraph. And then in the explanation, the student's starting to think, how are all these things connected together?
Yes, and that's the big part. Again, in that explanation, that's where you're asking why and how, right? So why does he borrow credibility from other professionals? How does he do it? And what kind of impact does that have? How does that make him even more credible? So you really want to, in your explanation, start to think about how and why those things are put together and to make an effective argument.
Right. So I think it's a she, Dr. Thayer, just FYI, in this example.
Oh, you know what? It is. It's fine.
But they start looking, like the student starts looking at these stories show her argument aligns with that of other professionals, right? So she's not coming out of left field. She includes their respective colleges to borrow the credibility of their institution. So let's look at how this student took their outline and turned it into a paragraph. So Dr. Thayer, you want to read it or you want me to?
Sure, I'll read it. So here you can see what they've done is they've gone from their outline. They've basically copied and pasted their point, illustrate, and explain, and then zhuzhed it up, made it real fancy into a paragraph. So here's the final thing. Amy Cuddy uses stories of other professionals' views and research on the body languages of people to help prove her argument. So again, we have that point. It's elaborated a little bit more than the outline, of course, but it still gets to the point of borrowing other professionals, bringing in other people. And then we have our illustration, which is color-coded that kind of lighter blue. As stated by Cuddy, quote, Nalini Ambati, a researcher at Tufts University, shows that when people watch 30-second soundless clips of real physician-patient interactions, their judgments of the physician's niceness predict whether or not that physician will be sued. She also claims Alex Todorov at Princeton has shown us judgments of political candidates' faces predict 70% of U.S. Senate and gubernatorial race. Now that's one of those words. It just doesn't really roll off.
Tuffy.
Gubernatorial race outcomes. Okay, so we have our illustration. So what she did, she had her point. She's talking about bringing in other professional views. And then the writer pulls in examples from the TED Talk to show where the speaker brought in other voices. Now we have our explanation. Cuddy shares these stories with the audience to show that her argument aligns with other respected researchers in the field. She takes this one step further by including the respective universities. This way, she shows the audience that she is as trustworthy as these repeated or respected researchers and famous institutions of higher education. Now, one thing you'll notice here is the writer doesn't use the word ethos, but the writer uses the word trustworthy. And because we know that ethos goes with credibility and trustworthiness, that those two things are synonymous. So I have a lot of students saying, okay, do I have to use ethos, pathos, logos? No, you don't have to. It just needs to be clear what we're talking about. But it doesn't hurt, right? This writer could have said she further reinforces or establishes her ethos by da 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 da, and that's fine too. Okay, so you just want to make sure that it's clear from the paragraph what rhetorical appeal we're talking about, right? So if we're talking about, she brings up sad stories to have the audience sympathize, we know that's going to be pathos, right? So just a little heads up on that. You don't have to technically use the words ethos, pathos, and logos. You just want to make sure it's clear by the paragraph which one you're talking about.
Yes. So here's an example and of a body paragraph. This one may not be as strong as the other one, and we can kind of talk about why. So I'll read this one, and then Dr. Thayer and I will talk about it. Classical music is for everybody. Mr. Xander talks about being in Ireland where he played the Sharpa piece for a bunch of street kids, and a boy came up to him and told him, I never listened to classical music in my life, but when you played that Sharpa piece, my brother was shot last year and I didn't cry for him, but last night when you played that piece, he was the one I was thinking about, and I felt the tears streaming down my face, and it felt really good to cry for him. When Mr. Xander plays this piece, he tells the audience to think of someone that you adore that is no longer here with you during the piece, and then he plays all the way through. The audience claps when he finishes, and you can see the shining and the emotion in their eyes. So Dr. Thayer, I'm gonna pretend like this is your paragraph, and I'm gonna ask you, what is your point?
Well, my point is that he used classical music to make to connect to people emotionally.
Well, that's not what you wrote.
But it says classical music is for everybody in my point.
Right. And that has nothing to do with the rhetorical appeals, right?
Oh, okay. So I'm supposed to have my point focus on the effectiveness of the argument, not the subject matter, right?
Yes.
We have some cool things in here. He brings in a very emotional point or excerpt, but he never really does anything with it, right? So if we wanted to reframe this, we could say, he brings in emotional stories to show the connections that music can have in our daily lives or whatever, right? And then he could say, for example, he brings in the story of da 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 da. This is a very heartfelt story, right? So we're using a lot of words that go back to this appeal to pathos. But because that point just says classical music is for everybody, that starts like a summary, and it starts talking more about the content of the talk instead of how the speaker is making an effective argument. Towards the end, we start to get there a little bit, but not enough, right? He tells the audience to think of someone. Why does he do that? Why does he want the audience to personalize his talk?
Yeah, to me, it feels like this writer is really just restating what occurred in the talk in chronological order, right? They're not really getting into the why he did it. He talks about the audience is crying, but again, why, right? It's about that engagement and that connection between music and emotion that he's trying to get the audience to feel. So
and why does he want the audience to cry?
Right.
Like, why crying more so than like laughter or anything else?
Yeah, why a negative emotion? So that's something this writer could look at. Also, just as a little side note, when you refer to the speaker of the TED Talk, you can just refer to him or her by last name. So the student doesn't need to say Mr. Xander or Miss So-and-so. It's just Xander. Once you refer to the person by full name, you just call them by last name throughout.
Yeah.
So this would be one, where Dr. Thayer and I would give the feedback, like, this is about the content. We're talking about the effectiveness of the argument using the rhetorical appeals. It's in there, but it's not in the paragraph. Like, it's in the TED Talk, but it's not in the paragraph itself. So,
and if you follow the outline, it's going to keep you from making those kind of paragraphs.
Yes.
So make sure you're reading the questions for, each part of the outline as well.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll read this one and we can kind of go through it. Whoever he is, uses his credibility to let the viewers believe and trust him. For him to show his credibility to the audience, it gives them a positive reaction about this device, knowing that he puts basically his time into this. Don't know what it is. The audience is able to give a second look at this device, knowing how much time he has put into just making it better. What?
I mean, I will say the student does have credibility, so we do know which rhetorical appeal the writer's talking about.
Absolutely. And that would be a solid point if he changed he with like Robinson, right? Robinson uses his credibility to let the viewers believe and trust him.
Right.
What's missing here? The illustration. We do not see any excerpt from the TED Talk that illustrates what they're talking about. Every single body paragraph needs to have an illustration, quotations from the talk to show what it is, what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And then after it just kind of falls short, right? So the audience is able to give a second look at this device. For what's the device? I don't know. Is it a watch? Is it a phone? Is it a magnet? What is it? No clue. Is it a horn? A bicycle? A shoe?
A
I don't know.
unicycle.
It's a unicycle. Could be.
Straws.
Could be. So again, we don't really understand the context of it. And it says here, you know, it's the audience is able to give a second look, knowing how much time he has put into just making it better. Okay, why does he want the audience to know how much time it took? Well, you know, if you're working on something and it takes you, say, like years and years, you want to share that because it shows that you have really been painstakingly working on the details and fine tuning. I can't talk today. And fine tuning it and really you know, putting something together of quality, whatever it is. The unicycle.
I mean, it's just experience, right? Right. The longer you work at something, the more experience you have, the more credible it makes you seem.
Yes.
If we came into class on the first day and said, this is our first semester, I've never taught a class before, versus I've been teaching for, 15 years,
right.
the whole, you think of us completely differently.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So those are two examples. What you guys are going to be working on is taking your outline and turning it into a draft. So make sure you are going on Canvas and reviewing the details of the assignment.
Why are we still so small, Miss Fletcher? Make us big.
Oh, okay. You want to get big now?
Yes, so we can at least see them.
Stop sharing. Okay.
There we are. Hello. So yes, just make sure that you're working on the assignment. You do have your intro and 3 body paragraphs to work on.
2.
Make sure to don't listen to me, 2 intro and 2 read the assignment. Make sure that you're using your outline. That is going to help you through and through with this paper.
All right. Email us if you have any questions. Otherwise, we'll see you for the next video. Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.